Hi everyone, it's Marina again, talking about CBTw and some key topics here. Today I'm going to talk just very briefly about some early engagement strategies that you can use. This is not new information. This is all part of kind of what we've been talking about, and it's also in your facilitator guide and in the training that we did early on. But I wanted to emphasize a few things that you could use throughout, but especially the first few sessions of CBTW when you have a new group coming in. Perhaps you don't know any of the veterans there and you're just trying to get things started and get things going in the right direction. So I've shared here some ideas. So I'm going to go through each of these five: assist, reinforce, normalize, listen, and reflect. So the first one is just assisting veterans and participants with what they need. So helping them with the technology, especially with getting on Zoom and using the various features of Zoom. For this research study, we tried to do that as much as possible in advance so that veterans are prepared and are ready for that first session. But of course, as we all know, there are technology issues that persist. And so assisting people so that they can um, participate in group as much as possible and feel like they're in a good position to be able to do that is really helpful. And then if needed, and if you're able, if you have time, providing any assistance that's needed outside of group. It could just be making a phone call to check in with someone or helping someone who continues to have issues or barriers with that technology. We also have other resources at our disposal. We have some study tablets that we can use if people want to come into the VA. We can connect those to the VA Wi-Fi and set them up with a private place that they can do group that way. And so that's an option for us. I think there are some other options available to us as well. But continuing to sort of assist with people, and if people need catch-up sessions, if especially if other barriers prevented them from being able to go to group or attend that week, and providing those sessions if possible. And if your schedule doesn't allow for that, that's totally fine too. We just like to do that if we can. The idea is just to engage people and hopefully they'll attend group in the future or keep attending if that's something they're interested in. I'm talking about this today because this engagement is really critical at the beginning. If we can engage people early on, it really helps us continue to engage them as we go forward. Whereas if people don't attend early on and we're not able to engage them, it becomes much harder to kind of bring them into the fold later on and get them to do that. It also sort of helps us develop that rapport with them and that working relationship as we go forward. And as we'll talk in a minute, we learn more about them and we can use that knowledge, that sort of growing conceptualization during the activities of the group and with the material. Another element or strategy is just providing lots of positive reinforcement. And this is something that I've always really liked to do in group settings, is to reinforce early and often for things like sharing during the group, sharing their exercise, sharing their thoughts and experiences or what they've gone through, just reading out of the manual. And I usually invite people to do this, and veterans really like it. And so just saying thanks for reading that, or thanks for sharing that, or thanks for telling us about that. Those are just some basic reinforcement strategies that I've used that seems to work well, especially if you're walking into a circumstance where you don't know the veterans that you'll be working with in group. Um, Other things would just be recognizing their persistence and persisting through barriers that they might encounter. And it could be many. It could be they had trouble getting on the Zoom, or they were late, but they came anyways, and they could have easily skipped knowing that they were kind of running a little bit late. There could be other barriers that they've encountered. Could be barriers to work that they've encountered that they've had to address and have worked hard to do that. So trying to reinforce some of that tends to really help build that rapport with the veteran. Another thing to do is just normalizing how people might feel coming into this group and this intervention, that can be, anxiety provoking, nervous. They might feel uncomfortable being around other people or working through some of these topics. They might feel fearful or just kind of annoyed and not that into it. And just normalizing that it's kind of normal and we all sort of feel that way. And maybe it would be kind of weird to not feel that way when you're going into something, brand new. And so normalization can also be something early on and perhaps even throughout the intervention that can be helpful. All right. Our next strategy is just to listen. This isn't anything different than what you've normally done, but just really focusing on actively listening and just allowing the veteran that time and space to kind of tell us about themselves and about their experiences, why they're here in group, what their work goals are. And then early on, we tell that work story, but just being quiet and just allowing that space to exist. And if there is a silent period or a few seconds where no one's talking, that's okay too. Listening is really key. If we feel like we always have to fill every quiet space, then it kind of makes it difficult for us to actively listen. The other key piece of this is it allows us to learn about the veterans and continue to grow and build that case conceptualization that we'll use throughout this CBT intervention. And then also, of course, things like maintaining a non-judgmental stance, being understanding if someone does come into group late, if someone misses session, we always want to encourage them to come back. Even if they've missed, we always say, hey, come back in when you can. We'd love to have you next week. And we continue to encourage those behaviors and be understanding of the many life barriers that might get in the way of someone being able to come to group. It could be a million different things. There may be more pressing matters, housing, family. It could be an employment opportunity they feel like they need to focus on. We always encourage people to come to group and we listen closely for those sorts of things. All right, and then last is our main technique that we use in CBTW, which is again reflection. Early on, the first few sessions, we focus on really basic levels of reflection until we actually figure out what makes the most sense for veterans, what level are they, and at what point should we intervene? So, how sophisticated or basic should our reflections be? And also, along with the stage of the intervention, we're starting at session one. So we're at a low stage, the lowest stage. We haven't gone through some of our cognitive strategies yet and other things. So we start really low. So I have some examples of some very basic and direct reflections here. If a veteran tells a work story about having lost jobs in the past, the basic reflection could be like, it seems like you're saying you've lost a lot of jobs in the past. Or if they talk about having sort of difficult interpersonal interactions or stormy relationships on the job, you could say, you've noticed that working with other people is kind of hard. Or basic reflections could just be feedback, like, thanks for sharing that. Sounds like you're really working hard on your resume, or you're wondering what to do about your job search. You're a little anxious about being in group, or you went to a job fair this week. It could be even more basic than these examples. Um, but that's where we would start at the beginning. That reflection, though, and veterans feeling like you are understanding them does a whole lot to build that rapport, which is really our goal here, and that engagement, so people will continue to come to group and have the opportunity to benefit from this intervention and from working with you. So those are some of my basic engagement keys. It's certainly not an exhaustive list. There's lots of other things I didn't put here that maybe are even more important than these, but these are some things that you might think about very early on when you're trying to engage people and build that rapport and work with them. So thanks again for watching these videos. I hope they're helpful, and we'll talk to you soon.